It was 6:42 a.m. when the elevator doors finally closed. A woman stood inside, barefoot, hair damp, holding a single keycard. The camera above her hummed faintly, its red light steady, unblinking. She pressed a button, then another, then all of them. None lit up. She leaned into the corner as if hiding from something beyond the doors. Her breath came fast. She peered out once, twice, each time expecting someone to appear. The hall outside was still, carpet washed in the pink light of sunrise bleeding through the resort's glass atrium. Then she stepped out. Halfway. Looked both ways. The camera kept watching. Her lips moved, whispering something soundless. And just as she turned back, one hand reaching for the door, it closed without her. When it opened again, seconds later, the elevator was empty. No exit alarm, no staff, no sign of struggle. By 9 a.m., the resort system logged her room as checked out. Housekeeping entered. The bed was made. The suitcase gone, but the keycard she held in that footage was never used again. And 2 days later, police divers would find her belongings floating miles down the coast, sealed in a suitcase that should have been locked inside her room. The resort claimed she left on her own. The elevator camera disagreed. The Pacific air carried the smell of salt and chlorine, the two scents that defined every morning at the Coral Vista Resort. Waves rolled somewhere beyond the glass facade, their rhythm steady, almost mechanical. Inside, the lobby was still, marble floors reflecting the soft peach glow of sunrise, potted palms unmoving beneath the hum of conditioned air. At the check-in counter, the night clerk rubbed his eyes and watched the woman from the elevator footage cross the lobby barefoot. Her name, he would later tell police, was Mara Ellison, 32, travel writer. Checked in 3 nights before for what she called a reset. She'd arrived with 2 bags and a camera, said she wanted to write about disconnection, about how to vanish safely in a world that never stops watching. Now she looked nothing like the woman who'd signed that intake form. Her hair was wet, darkened by water that left a thin trail across the floor tiles. She carried a single keycard, nothing else. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at anyone. She moved straight toward the elevator, pressed the button, and disappeared behind closing doors. That was the last moment anyone saw her alive. Hours earlier, the resort had been asleep except for the cleaning crew and a few lingering guests. Security logs would later show that Mara's door, room 814, opened at 4:03 a.m. No one entered afterward. Her window, however, had been left wide open, curtains blowing inward like breath. Mara had arrived on a Thursday alone but not lonely. Staff remembered her as polite, precise, always writing in a small notebook she kept tucked under her phone. She told the concierge she was working on an article about digital ghosts, people who erase their online lives and vanish into the real world for a while. She asked strange questions. How often do room keys get reused? How many cameras are there in the halls? Who controls the footage? When the clerk laughed, she smiled faintly and wrote something down. That first night, she dined alone on the terrace overlooking the sea. She ordered grilled fish and 1 glass of white wine. The waiter, a college student named Raoul, said she barely touched her food. He remembered because of how she watched the ocean, not in admiration but study, as if memorizing the horizon line for later. He asked if she was all right. She said, "I'm just deciding how far away is far enough." Her social feeds went silent the next day. Emails unanswered, phone off. The resort's Wi-Fi log recorded one upload from her laptop at 2:11 a.m., an image file labeled Window. The system automatically deleted it when her account timed out. IT later found only fragments, a blurred reflection of a figure standing by the glass, light bending off wet skin. That was the last trace of her online. On the morning before she vanished, Mara spent 4 hours walking the beach alone. The lifeguard on duty said she was collecting shells, though he never saw her pick any up. She stayed near the waterline, pacing, sometimes stopping to write, sometimes staring back at the hotel as if counting its floors. At 1 p.m., she stopped by the front desk to ask a question that seemed harmless then but chilling later. "If someone checks out early, how quickly do you clear the room?" The clerk told her usually within an hour. She thanked him, smiled, went upstairs. What the staff didn't know was that at that same hour, another guest, Evelyn Chen, staying in 8 and 12, heard something through the wall. Running water, Then a woman's voice speaking softly. She thought it was a phone call until she realized there were no pauses, no replies. Just a steady monologue muffled by plaster and distance. Then a loud thud, followed by silence. When she mentioned it at checkout, the manager dismissed it as plumbing. That evening, a storm crawled up the coast. The resort's lights flickered once, twice before backup generators took over. Guests watched lightning stitch the sky above the water. Staff locked patio doors and stacked chairs. At 11 p.m., security guard Luis Reyes walked the 8th floor corridor. Everything was normal. Room 814's Do Not Disturb sign still hung from the handle. At midnight, Mara's door opened. No one on camera. No alarm triggered. The keycard registered an exit swipe but not a re-entry. The system would later insist she had checked out electronically. When housekeeping entered hours later, the room appeared untouched. Bed neatly made, towels folded, minibar closed. But the air smelled faintly of ozone and salt water, as though the storm had been inside. On the glass desk sat her notebook, soaked along the edges. The final page had bled ink into illegibility, except for 2 words still visible near the top margin. Basement, camera. The staff packaged her belongings for lost and found and moved on. Only later, when police reviewed the footage, did they realize there was no record of anyone carrying those bags out of the building. No luggage. No checkout signature. Just a digital entry marking departure confirmed. In the days that followed, rumors multiplied like mold. Some said she'd drowned, a writer swallowed by the sea she'd come to study. Others whispered about a lover, a stalker, a hidden debt. But those who watched the footage knew better. Because in the seconds after the elevator doors closed on Mara Ellison, the camera kept recording. And 3 minutes later, the elevator descended on its own. Doors opened on the basement level. Something wet dripped across the threshold, pooling on the tiles. Then a shadow passed the lens, tall, indistinct, carrying something that looked like a bag. When investigators enhanced the footage, they noticed a reflection in the brushed steel of the elevator wall. An arm with a staff wristband. No, one on shift claimed to be there. That was where the contradictions began. The resort's electronic system logged the camera malfunctioning between 6:45 and 7 a.m., exactly when the shadow appeared. Maintenance reports from that morning were altered an hour later, signed by an employee who, records showed, had resigned 2 weeks before. The resort's management issued a statement. Guests checked out safely at 9 a.m. All video irregularities are due to weather interference. But the police had already pulled the time-stamped footage from the backup server. The one management forgot existed. In that version, the elevator doors never opened again. The day Mara Ellison disappeared began with perfect weather. A still sky, calm sea, and that false sense of safety that only exists when nothing seems wrong. Hotel cameras showed her moving through the lobby at 6:03 a.m., wearing a blue sundress, sunglasses perched on her head though the sun hadn't yet risen. She stopped briefly at the breakfast buffet, poured coffee into a paper cup, and stared out through the glass toward the ocean. To anyone watching, she looked like a tourist preparing for another quiet day in paradise. But the timestamp told a different story. She was already supposed to have checked out. According to the resort's digital ledger, her departure had been processed automatically at 5:59 a.m. No staff entry, no card swipe, no front desk confirmation. When investigators later audited the system, they found the checkout command originated from an internal device, one only accessible through management login. The name on the authorization line, Jay Anders, the operations manager, but when questioned, Anders denied it. He said he hadn't touched the system since midnight. Must have been an error, he told police. The server resets sometimes. But the power hadn't flickered since the storm passed. Security footage placed Mara on the beach later that morning. She walked barefoot along the shoreline, the hem of her dress dragging through wet sand, her phone in hand. At 7:11 a.m., she pointed the camera toward the hotel and took a single photograph. Metadata later confirmed the file existed, then vanished. It was deleted manually from the device's memory at 7:13. When the phone was found 2 days later in her suitcase floating offshore, the storage chip was cracked clean through, as if crushed deliberately. Housekeeping knocked on room 814 around 8. No answer. The Do Not Disturb tag was gone. Inside, the room appeared ready for a new guest. Only one item remained out of place. The bathroom floor was damp and the towels were missing. The maid, a woman named Estella, later told detectives she noticed condensation on the mirror. Someone had drawn a circle with a line through it like a crude no-entry symbol. When she wiped it away, the word beneath became visible in smeared residue: stay. She thought nothing of it. People left stranger things behind. At 9:05 a.m., the resort's automatic door sensors captured the outline of a figure leaving through the lobby entrance. Height, build, and clothing matched Mara, but there was one problem. The timestamp was wrong. The system recorded her departure 12 minutes before she entered the elevator. On the upper floor, two timelines. One real, one manufactured. The hotel's IT technician, a man named Paul Reyes, swore the server couldn't produce duplicate signatures unless someone had cloned her keycard or copied her biometric check-in data. Both would require management access. When the police asked who else could log in besides Anders, he hesitated. "There's a remote terminal," he said finally. "In the basement." The basement wasn't on the resort's public blueprints. It was a maintenance level, unfinished concrete, storage, generator rooms. Few staff went there except to check the pumps or electrical systems. At 10:17 a.m., according to backup logs, someone used a master keycard to access the elevator panel and select the basement manually. The name on the encoded entry, Monsieur Ellison, meaning Mara had gone there herself. That revelation split the case in half. If she went willingly, it was a voluntary disappearance. If she didn't, someone wanted it to look that way. The first search team descended that afternoon. The air below was heavy, metallic. Water trickled through exposed pipes. Rows of storage lockers lined the corridor, all sealed except one. Inside, buckets, cleaning rags, and a large gray tarp folded on the floor. When they unfolded it, a small puddle of salt water spilled out, carrying a single seashell that didn't belong. On the wall above the tarp, faint scratches formed a shape, a circle with a line through it, the same symbol from her mirror. The team also found a power junction cabinet fitted with an unregistered router. When connected, it produced a single data trail, a live feed of the hotel's elevator cameras, running independently of the main system. The most recent playback showed the image already known worldwide. Mara pressing every button, stepping out, vanishing. But this version contained 2 additional seconds of footage. After the doors closed, the screen flickered, then displayed a reflection in the polished metal. A hand reached into frame holding a master keycard, swiping it against the control panel from the outside. The reflection was clear enough to reveal a logo on the wristband, the Coral Vista maintenance insignia. But when investigators paused the image, they noticed something stranger. The hand was gloved. While authorities combed through the footage, Mara's friends began contacting local media. She wasn't the first guest to go missing at Coral Vista. 2 years earlier, a honeymooner had vanished after an argument near the pool bar. The resort's statement at the time? Guests checked out early, no follow-up. No body recovered. Patterns started forming. Detectives turned attention to the resort's manager, Jacob Anders, 44, employed at Coral Vista since its opening. Calm, meticulous, the kind of man who called everyone sir and ma'am. His employment record was spotless, except for one note buried in HR files. Previous complaint, unauthorized key duplication. 2018. No action taken. When confronted, Anders denied everything. She was unstable, he said. Always asking about cameras, basements, nonsense. I think she wanted attention. But something in his tone cracked on the word wanted. That same night, police returned to the basement with a warrant. They followed the drainage pipe leading toward the maintenance exit, a rusted door opening to a service road behind the resort. The soil was soft from last night's rain. In it, they found tire tracks that stopped abruptly at the tree line. 10 meters farther, a shallow ditch. There, half buried in sand, was Mara's missing suitcase. Inside, her phone, camera, and wallet all zipped in plastic, dry despite the waterlogged suitcase. Every timestamp on the phone ended at 6:45 a.m., the moment the elevator door closed. The coroner's office never received a body. Search teams swept miles of coastline, Divers scoured reefs and coves. Nothing. But then, on the third night, fishermen spotted something tangled in the shallows. A fabric scrap caught around driftwood. When pulled free, it revealed the torn hem of a blue sundress, faded but unmistakable. The same pattern seen in the security footage. The fibers were coated in thin, translucent film. Industrial. Detergent used in the resort's laundry facilities. She'd been inside the building after the footage ended. Back in the control room, Reyes uncovered another irregularity. At the exact moment the elevator camera cut to static, one of the basement security feeds briefly activated, then wiped itself. When recovered from the backup drive, only 4 seconds remained. The image was dark, blurred, but you could make out the elevator doors opening to reveal an empty cabin. Then in the corner of the frame, a figure entered from the left, carrying a laundry cart. Metal rattled softly. The figure paused, leaned forward, and looked up, directly into the camera, face hidden beneath a translucent plastic cover. Hands gloved. One gloved hand reached up and unplugged the lens. The feed ended. When detectives showed the clip to Anders, he claimed the carts were handled by subcontractors. "I don't know who that is," he said. "Probably one of the cleaning crew. But every employee on record for that shift was accounted for, except one. Estela Morales, the maid who had found the word stay on Mara's mirror. She hadn't returned to work since that morning. Her staff apartment was empty, uniform gone, ID missing. Neighbors said she left before sunrise carrying a large black trash bag. No one saw her after that. Days later, the investigation expanded beyond the resort. Police learned Estela had once worked at another hotel 2 towns north, one that closed abruptly after a guest drowned in an indoor pool. That case had been ruled accidental, though the guest's phone was never found. The signature in that hotel's lost and found ledger: E. Morales. The handwriting matched the housekeeping log in Mara's room. Forensic techs re-examined the elevator footage again. When the door first opened on Mara, there was a faint reflection on the opposite panel. Not her, but someone standing in the hallway's far corner, just outside the frame, a figure in white, too tall to be her, too still to be coincidence. The resort tried to bury the footage, but by then the story had escaped. Clips appeared online, edited, looped, dissected frame by frame. The public latched on to the impossible details: the disappearing reflection, the dripping floor, the unblinking red light. Conspiracy theories multiplied: ghosts, cover-ups, human trafficking. But the truth, as always, was quieter and worse. At 2 a.m., 2 nights after the footage release, a janitor cleaning the service elevator in the basement found a streak of blue fabric caught in the hinge. It matched the sundress. Underneath, taped to the metal panel, was a folded note written in water-warped ink. "She never left." "Look up," he did. In the ceiling vent above the elevator shaft, he saw something glinting, tiny, metallic, reflecting light like an eye, a camera lens, but not the resort's. A hidden one, smaller, newer. Its power source freshly spliced into the main grid. The last recording pulled from it changed the investigation entirely, because when they watched it, the timestamp didn't show 6:42 a.m. It showed 8:17, over an hour after Mara's supposed disappearance. The elevator doors opened. A different woman stepped out, wearing Mara's dress, carrying her suitcase. Walking calmly toward the lobby, and on her wrist a staff ID badge, name blurred by glare. The footage changed everything. Until that moment, investigators believed the elevator video marked the end. Now it was only the midpoint, an edit, a scene rearranged to hide what came next. The woman wearing Mara Ellison's dress walked calmly through the basement corridor, suitcase in hand, steps unhurried. The camera followed her reflection in the elevator's steel, just long enough to capture a wristband flashing under the light. Housekeeping. Her face never turned toward the lens. Detective Rafael Dominguez of the Coastal Police was the first to notice what others missed. The reflection wasn't just a reflection. It showed a second figure in the background, standing motionless by the stairwell, half hidden in shadow. He replayed it 6 times before speaking. "There's someone watching her," he said. "And they're not moving." He froze the frame. The silhouette was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing dark clothes. No badge. No uniform. The shape seemed to tilt its head toward the camera as if aware of being seen. Then the clip ended. Dominguez had been on the force 21 years. He'd seen suicides staged as accidents, accidents framed as crimes. But this case was different. The resort didn't just have gaps, it had architecture built to create them. He started with the missing maid, Estela Morales. Her personnel file listed an address in the staff quarters outside the property. When detectives forced open the door, they found the apartment stripped bare. Except for one thing: a framed photograph face down on the kitchen counter. Inside it, a smiling young woman with another figure beside her, the operations manager, Jacob Anders. They looked close, too close for employer and employee. Pinned behind the photo, hidden beneath the backing, was a keycard labeled Service B, the same type used for basement access. Fingerprint analysis would later reveal two overlapping sets, Estela's and Mara's. Dominguez began reconstructing timelines. He mapped every staff movement that morning: the breakfast shift, the cleaning rotation, the security patrols. Each employee accounted for, except Estela. Her radio had gone offline at 5:58 a.m. 2 minutes before the system logged Mara's automatic checkout. Her phone pinged once near the resort's South Pier at 7 a.m., then vanished. It was never recovered. Dominguez requested interviews with management. The resort lawyer arrived instead, carrying a clipboard and a smile that said nothing. "We've cooperated fully," she said. "We respect privacy, but our guest safety is our priority." The word privacy hit him like static. He asked for access to the full CCTV server. She refused. 2 days later, an anonymous envelope arrived at the police station. No return address. Inside, a thumb drive labeled Pool Feed Archive. It contained a single video. In the footage, dated the night before Mara vanished, the pool area was empty except for one person. Estela mopping tiles near closing time. Then another figure entered, Mara carrying a towel, hair wet, barefoot. They spoke. No audio. Mara pointed toward the cameras, gesturing sharply like she was demanding to see something. Estela shook her head. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out a keycard, and handed it to her. Mara took it, looked down, then turned and left. That card would later be identified as Service B. The footage proved one thing: Mara didn't stumble into the basement. She'd been invited, but why? When Dominguez examined the resort's floor plans again, he noticed something strange. The elevator servicing the upper floors descended to 2 basement levels, but the second one was sealed off after construction. Officially, it didn't exist. Yet maintenance logs from 5 days before her disappearance listed activity recorded at B2. He contacted the engineering contractor responsible for the resort's original wiring. The man on the phone laughed softly when he heard the name Coral Vista. "They told us not to label that floor," he said. "Said it was for utility overflow. But we installed storage racks, surveillance hubs, and..." He hesitated. "Some kind of observation room. Cameras feeding into a private network." "Observation of what?" Dominguez asked. The line went silent. Then faintly, "Guests." Dominguez drove to the resort that night himself. He parked down the hill, waited until after midnight, and entered through the staff tunnel the divers had used days earlier. He knew the risks: chain of evidence, trespassing, but he also knew the case was dying under red tape. He found the elevator panel unlocked, the floor buttons labeled L, B1, and a faint outline where another had been removed. He slipped the Service B card through the slot. A mechanical click, the panel lit up. A hidden button glowed beneath his finger. He pressed it. The elevator shuddered, descended past B1, deeper into concrete. The air grew colder, drier, like a cellar sealed too long. When the doors opened, the light was dim amber, humming faintly. The room smelled of metal and salt. Rows of monitors lined the walls, black screens flickering with static. Some bore frozen images: hotel hallways, stairwells, the ocean view. And on one screen, paused mid-frame, the elevator footage of Mara Ellison. In front of the monitors sat a desk covered in hotel ID badges, each clipped to a name. Each name crossed out, he counted 12. One badge read E. Morales, another M. Ellison III bore his own. It was a replica, perfectly forged. Dominguez stepped back, heart steady but heavy. Someone had been inside the investigation from the start. He called for backup. No signal. The radio hissed static, then from somewhere deeper in the corridor came the echo of movement, a slow rhythmic scraping, like metal dragged on concrete. He followed it toward a half-open maintenance door. Inside was a single laundry cart, wheels rusted, fabric liner damp. Beneath the liner, folded blue cloth, Mara's second dress. He lifted it, and something fell to the floor, a plastic card sleeve containing a photograph. It showed Mara and Estella, standing side by side near the resort pool, both smiling. Behind them, in the reflection of the water, a tall man in dark clothing stared toward the lens, and on his wrist, the same resort watch Anders always wore. When they confronted Anders the next morning, he didn't deny the photo. He denied remembering it. "I meet hundreds of guests," he said quietly. "I don't keep track." But investigators discovered he had rented an apartment 5 miles inland under a different name. The landlord described a quiet man who came once a month, paid cash, and used a different phone every visit. Inside that apartment, police found walls covered in printed screenshots, elevator frames, guest names, room numbers. Pinned at the center of the wall was a blueprint of Coral Vista, the basement level circled in red ink. Next to it, a note in block handwriting: "Observation project continues. Don't get caught watching." It turned out Coral Vista wasn't just a resort. It was part of a corporate pilot program, Echelon Leisure Systems, testing enhanced security environments. Guests were unknowingly recorded through motion-triggered devices for behavioral study. Data would later be anonymized and sold. At least, that was the intention on paper. Anders had taken the system offline months earlier, but the private feed kept running, rerouted through the secret router in the basement. Someone had been watching long after the project officially ended. The more Dominguez uncovered, the stranger it became. Maintenance logs showed unauthorized entries to B2 every few weeks, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always by the same key signature, service. B, the last one recorded, was 2 days after Mara vanished. By then, her keycard should have been inactive. They reopened the resort's employee records. Estella's application file listed no national ID number, no tax record, no emergency contact. Her references were generic. When they traced the name Estella Morales through labor agencies, they found it recycled across multiple resorts, none able to confirm who she really was. In each case, a guest had vanished under strange circumstances, always women traveling alone, always after asking questions about cameras. The investigation spread to other properties linked to Echelon Leisure Systems. In one, a night guard admitted he'd been paid cash to swap out tapes after a technical error. He remembered a woman overseeing the process, medium height, dark hair, quiet voice. She always wore gloves. When shown a photo lineup, he pointed not to Estella but to Mara. Dominguez felt the ground shift. Was it possible Mara Ellison wasn't just a victim? He revisited her past. Before freelancing, she'd written for a privacy advocacy blog called The Blackout Journal, an outlet exposing surveillance in public spaces. Her last published piece described how luxury hotels tracked guests under the guise of safety. The article ended with a line now impossible to ignore: "The only way to see who's watching you is to disappear." Dominguez no longer trusted the narrative, any of it. He revisited every timestamp, every system entry. Each inconsistency pointed to one conclusion: Mara hadn't simply vanished. She'd orchestrated a disappearance to expose the resort's secret surveillance program. But someone had discovered her plan and turned it against her. When forensic techs cracked her waterlogged laptop, the hard drive yielded fragments of encrypted notes. One file reconstructed from partial sectors read, "If they erase me, check the elevator first." It sees everything, and attached a list of names. 12 women, each missing from resorts across the coast. The last name on the list, Estella Morales. That night, Dominguez walked through Coral Vista's empty lobby. Rain pressed against the glass. The building felt hollow, like a shell waiting for a new ghost. He rode the elevator alone, descending once more to the basement. The doors opened to silence. Every monitor was dark. Every ID badge gone. Only one thing remained on the desk: a folded housekeeping uniform, clean, pressed. Waiting pinned to the collar was a note in blue ink: "Checkout confirmed. The elevator behind him chimed softly, doors sliding open. Inside, the floor was wet. The elevator doors opened on their own that night. No call button pressed. No floor request logged. Detective Dominguez stepped back as the cabin filled with the sound of dripping water, slow and rhythmic. The smell of chlorine drifted through the air, the pool's scent but heavier, artificial, like something cleaned too many times. He stared at the wet floor. A footprint glistened, barefoot, small, recent, and then the power flickered. Upstairs in the empty control room, the backup monitors came alive one by one. Each screen showed the same feed. The elevator viewed from above. The camera panned slightly as though guided by an unseen hand. In the lower corner, a message appeared in white text across black static. Observation resumed. Dominguez didn't see it. He was already inside the elevator, following the trail that led downward. He pressed the hidden button beneath the panel. B2, the descent was slower this time. The hum deeper. When the doors opened, the light was gone. Just darkness and the echo of machinery humming somewhere beyond. He switched on his flashlight. The beam caught a row of metal doors, each labeled in stenciled paint. Archive 1, Archive 2, Archive 3. He opened the nearest. Inside were shelves stacked with hard drives, each labeled by date. The most recent read, 0614, Mara Ellison. He plugged one into his field laptop. The file directory loaded instantly, thousands of clips, all captured from the resort's hidden cameras. Bedrooms, hallways, pool decks. Every guest, every staff member recorded, but one folder sat apart, protected by encryption. Its name, Eve, he ran a decryption key. The first file opened with static. Then a voice. Not Mara's, not Estella's, but a calm female narrator, speaking softly, almost clinically. This is Phase 4 of the Echelon Behavioral Observation Project. Subject identities have been randomized. Emotional response index remains stable. Test complete, the voice paused. A soft exhale, terminate sample group. Prepare transition. Dominguez froze. He scrubbed through the footage. In the next clip, Mara appeared in the elevator, barefoot, frantic. But now, the image expanded to reveal what was outside the frame all along. A figure stood in the hallway holding a small remote control. She pressed a button. The doors closed. It was Estella. But she wasn't looking at Mara. She was looking directly into the surveillance lens mounted above. The video continued. After the door shut, Estella turned to someone else. Another figure half in shadow, wearing a collared shirt. He stepped forward, face visible for a single second. Jacob Anders. He said something the camera didn't capture, then handed her a folded towel and pointed toward the basement. The next clip began moments later. Same camera angle, same hallway, but Mara was gone. Dominguez's pulse slowed to a measured rhythm. He had the truth now, but it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like stepping deeper into someone else's design. He clicked on another file. This one was labeled Control Footage, Subject Transfer. It showed the basement corridor, the laundry cart from earlier. Two figures pushed it toward a metal door marked Storage. When the door opened, water vapor spilled out. Behind it was a chamber lined with mirrors. At the center, a glass tank half filled, pipes running into the walls. Inside the tank was the blue sundress, floating. He paused the footage, stared at the timestamp. 6:47 a.m., minutes after the elevator door closed on Mara, so she hadn't left the building. She'd been brought below it, and the camera that caught it all, the hidden lens in the elevator ceiling, was the only one Anders and Estella didn't control. When Dominguez returned to the main server room, he found a file newly uploaded to the terminal. It hadn't been there minutes before. Filanami. For Raphael. He opened it. The video began in darkness. Then light, fluorescent, steady. A single figure standing in front of the camera, face obscured by a surgical mask. The voice was unmistakable. Mara Ellison. If you're seeing this, it means I failed to finish it my way. They wanted a test subject who wouldn't be missed, so I volunteered. I thought I could expose them by surviving it. Her breath shook once, then steadied. But they don't erase you by killing you. They erase you by rewriting what everyone thinks they saw. She leaned closer to the camera, eyes calm, almost peaceful. The elevator footage, They made that for you. For the story, static swallowed the frame. The next morning, police raided the resort under federal order. They seized servers, drives, and every remaining data backup. But by then, much of it was already gone, transferred through encrypted tunnels to offshore addresses. Anders was arrested but never spoke. He died in custody 2 weeks later. Cell lights out for exactly 23 minutes. The autopsy listed suicide. The bruising on his wrist said otherwise. Estela Morales was never found. The investigation widened again. Across the coast, former Echelon properties shut down overnight. Hard drives disappeared. Records vanished. A pattern emerged, each resort operating under identical design. Hidden cameras, mirrored elevators, sealed basements. Everyone bore the same construction signature, ELS Systems Division. And in archived emails between executives, one name surfaced repeatedly: Dr. Evelyn Chen, the same Evelyn who'd been Mara's neighbor on the 8th floor. The one who reported plumbing noises. She wasn't a guest at all. She was an architect of the observation system. When Dominguez confronted her, she didn't deny it. She spoke with unsettling calm. The project was meant to measure behavior under isolation. We needed a subject who believed she was being watched. Then proved it. He asked what happened to... Mara Chen's eyes flickered once. She became the control. He asked what that meant. She smiled, faintly. You can't measure fear unless it's real. Dominguez left the interview shaking. He returned to his office where the confiscated hard drives waited. One of them still bore Mara's name. He connected it to his monitor, at first only static. Then an image appeared, a live feed of an elevator interior empty, perfectly still. He checked the timestamp. Current. A line of text appeared at the bottom. Welcome back. Raphael. He reached to disconnect the drive, but the cursor moved on its own. A folder opened. B2 archive active. New footage began streaming. Surveillance from the basement hallway. A figure in a detective's coat walking toward the camera. He realized, too late, it was him. He looked up. The security camera in his office's corner was blinking red. That night, the power grid for the precinct went down for 47 seconds. When it returned, all case files related to Coral Vista were gone. The only record that remained was a short internal memo. Subject terminated. Control preserved. No signature. Weeks later, tourists returned to the coast. The resort was sold, renamed, reopened. No mention of surveillance, no trace of scandal. But the elevator remained. Same doors, same faint hum when idle. Guests sometimes said they felt watched inside, like the walls were listening. Once, a child pressed every button at once, laughing. The elevator didn't move. It stayed open, waiting. And in the reflection of the brushed steel panel, a faint shape appeared behind her, barefoot, hair wet, holding a key card. By the time the Coral Vista Resort reopened under its new name, the story had already been buried. The headlines stopped. The lawsuits faded. Tourists returned, drawn by the promise of renovated luxury with ocean views. The new owners painted the walls a paler shade of coral, changed the carpets, replaced the staff. But the building still sounded the same low hum of air conditioning, the same rhythm of waves colliding with glass. And in the basement, behind a door marked mechanical access only, the faint trace of salt still clung to the walls. The elevator was untouched. Detective Rafael Dominguez retired 6 months after the case dissolved. He left his badge on the desk without ceremony, handed in his gun, and drove south toward the border. His colleagues said he needed distance, but he wasn't running. He was listening. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard it, the soft hum of a rising elevator, the static crackle that came before a voice. Sometimes he dreamed of her. Mara Ellison, barefoot, holding her keycard like a relic. Each time she turned toward him and mouthed a phrase he could never quite hear. When he woke, his phone screen glowed faintly. Always the same message, time-stamped 3 a.m. Observation resumed. No sender. Back in the city, journalists tried to resurrect the story. Anonymous leaks surfaced online. Grainy photos of underground rooms, unverified footage of hidden cameras. But without evidence, it all faded into urban myth. One late-night podcast devoted an episode to her case, calling it The Elevator Ghost of Coral Vista. They described Mara as a lost writer obsessed with vanishing, a woman who blurred the line between investigation and illusion until she disappeared into her own experiment. Listeners found the recording eerie, even poetic. Few noticed the host's voice stuttered once mid-sentence when the audio feed warped for exactly 7 seconds. In the distortion, a faint whisper overlapped. "Stop watching." Dominguez spent his days in a small coastal town, renting a one-room house overlooking gray water. He avoided mirrors, avoided cameras. He cooked simple meals, wrote notes in a notebook he never left behind. But he kept one thing with him: the flash drive labeled Eve. He'd promised himself he'd never open it again. And for months, he didn't, until the night the wind blew through the house in a way that sounded like the ocean humming inside the walls. He connected it to his laptop. The screen stayed black for nearly a minute. Then a white cursor appeared. A single file name materialized: Checkout Protocol. He clicked it. The video showed an empty hotel hallway, polished floor, pale wallpaper, ambient music from unseen speakers. Then a faint reflection in the elevator door. Not Mara. Not Estella. Not Anders. Him. The timestamp. Tomorrow's date. The next morning he packed the drive and drove north toward the city. He stopped only once, at a roadside cafe where a television played silently above the counter. A news report scrolled across the screen. Authorities investigating second disappearance at the rebranded Coral Vista Resort. Guest last seen entering elevator alone at dawn. No footage shown. No names released. Dominguez stared at the television until the screen flickered to commercial. Then he paid and left. Outside, his phone buzzed once in his pocket. The message was short: "You missed her again." At the same time, 300 miles away, a group of resort developers met in a glass tower overlooking the bay. The agenda: expansion plans for Echelon Leisure Systems' new smart hospitality chain. A presentation screen displayed blueprints almost identical to Coral Vista's. Same elevator shaft, same dual basement architecture, the project name, Eve 2. When the lights dimmed, the lead consultant began to speak. Her voice was calm, practiced, and vaguely familiar. "Our goal is to improve guest experience through seamless observation and adaptive environments." On the projection behind her, the company logo shimmered. At the bottom corner, in tiny gray font, a watermark read, "Property of ELS Systems Division, Behavioral Interface Team." Her name badge glinted as she moved. E. Chen. 2 weeks later, demolition began at the old Coral Vista site to make room for an expanded marina. Workers drained the pool, stripped the walls, gutted the lobby. But when they reached the elevator shaft, they stopped. The elevator was still operational, even disconnected from power. It moved on its own. Technicians removed the cables, but the cabin continued to rise and descend in silence, as if guided by some internal pulse. One engineer swore he heard a voice from inside, soft, measured, female. "Next guest? Please." He quit the next day. Meanwhile, Dominguez kept chasing ghosts. Every resort he visited, he asked the same questions Mara once had. How many cameras? Who controls the footage? Who watches the watchers? The answers were always polite, rehearsed. He started noticing patterns. Small symbols etched into corners of hotel mirrors, scrawled behind maintenance panels hidden in plain sight. A circle with a line through it. The same mark from Mara's mirror. The same mark from the basement wall. He began photographing them, logging the locations: Mexico, Belize, Florida, Indonesia. The symbol appeared everywhere Echelon Leisure Systems operated, and once, scratched faintly into the glass of his own bathroom mirror. The last known sighting of Rafael Dominguez was recorded by a roadside security camera near the edge of the sea. His car pulled over onto the shoulder. He stepped out, carrying only a small suitcase. He walked toward the water until the tide reached his knees, then waist, then chest. The camera feed ended when fog rolled over the lens. When the car was recovered, the suitcase remained on the seat. Inside, the flash drive labeled Eve and a folded piece of paper. It contained a single handwritten line: "Observation complete." Months later, construction crews at the Coral Vista site found something sealed behind a concrete wall near the elevator shaft. A narrow metal box containing 12 old ID badges. Each name faded, except one M. Ellison, taped beside it, A Polaroid photograph. A hotel elevator standing open, empty. A blurred silhouette visible in the reflection of its steel wall. Someone had scrawled on the bottom margin in blue ink. She checked out. And beneath it, in smaller handwriting, neat, deliberate, almost identical. But we never did. Even now, guests at the rebuilt resort talk about the elevator, how it hums faintly at night, how its doors sometimes open without pressing the button, how the lights inside flicker like an old film reel when no one's there. Housekeeping says the floor is always wet in the mornings, though the upper suites are dry. And once a guest claimed to find a hotel keycard on the floor, sea salt crystallized along its edges, printed on its face, a single word, Eve. Some stories fade because they end, others fade because someone decided they shouldn't. Mara Ellison's name no longer appears in public records. Her articles have vanished from archives. Even her travel blog's domain now redirects to a lifestyle site promoting smart retreats for digital detox. But if you search deep enough, through cached fragments and erased metadata, you can still find her words. The line between watching and being watched disappears when both believe they're in control. And beneath it, her last post, one sentence long, the elevator never lied.